Good evening, everybody. Noodle Thumb here. Tonight I've got for you this Abus XP20s. This is a brown belt dimple lock. There's the key for you. It's got this, the pins are on the left side of the keyway as I have it, and it's got this interactive element at the end of the keyway, which is kind of weird. Certainly causes problems during gutting. I'll show you that when we get there. Switched around my camera setup for this one, hoping to give you a little bit better idea of a view of what's going on. So, a little bit more about this lock as I get started. It's got really subtle feedback, some spooled drivers that have a little barrel section added to the end of them that is tapered, so you basically pick it like a spool and then you have to nudge the pin a little bit more after you finish the spool part. The trick is, if you do it right after you finish the spool part, often you overset it a little bit. And, well, obviously that causes problems. So, you'll see me go through the lock, setting, and then move it on, and then I have to come back to that same pin probably several times. 2 and 5 in this are very low lift. 3 and 4 very high lift. 1 and 6 are medium. So basically by sliding the flag under 2 and 5, that's most of the setting they need. But 1, 3, and 4 tend to unset even through the spool portion. So you'll see me picking those a number of times and then testing them. And when something needs a little nudge, most of the other pins are pretty loose. And so I'll find my pick kind of more rotated than I want it, knowing that it feels like I'm lifting, like for example 2 and high, 2 and 5, much too high. But really, since the pins aren't binding at that time, it's not a problem. It just means that somewhere else I've got something that hasn't quite been set. So I just have to be patient, hunt down what that is, and then when I give it a nudge, I start getting feedback again from everything else. So right now I'm in one of those states where nothing seems to be binding. But sometimes, though, there we go. So that was on pin 4. And it didn't even really feel like I was doing anything. But I got this tiny bit of resistance on the flag, and there it was again on 1, where you've kind of, it feels like you've just lifted and nothing happened, and then you do it again and you get a little nudge on the pin. So this lock is definitely one that has taught me patience and persistence, just kind of retreading ground. I'm actually going to turn down the brightness on my light here so it doesn't glare off my hand so terrible. I'm sorry about that. It's taught me just to be persistent. If you know you have an overset, just keep testing and nudging pins, and eventually you get the open like that. This is going to be kind of weird for gutting. I may actually switch back to my regular orientation for gutting. No, I'm not. I'm just going to bring this up overhead so it'll be mostly a top-down perspective for the gut. And maybe it won't matter that it's coming from the left instead of from the right. Night, bud. Yeah, sweet dreams. You too. Love you. Alright. Yeah, I think that's good. Let's zoom back in the way I like it. Bring this down a little bit. There we go. All right. So I have this 3D printed core retention. This lock I am going to reset and gut with the key in and a shim. And actually, you know what? I'm gonna do this the easy way. I've gutted it so many times the regular way that I forgot that I grubbed it this morning. So, going to gut it grubbed to show the drivers and the key pins, and then I'll pull the plug and do the dangerous part that way. Okay, I'm gonna try and gut toward the camera. Upside down from my usual method. We'll see how it goes. Okay. Driver 1. So you can see on the end of that spool there's a little tapered nub, which is what caused me to have to go back over and over again. And key pin 1. Grubbing this lock was also interesting. And I'm gonna gut it in a odd order because of that. And these chambers are very close together, and so these 632 grub screws actually impinge on each other, And that reminds me, I actually need to keep these grub screws in their respective channels, because I have sanded some of them down to fit between the others. So their threads actually protrude through the wall between chambers, which makes this, somewhat a precarious lock situation here. Let's see, trying to dump out this spring. There we go. Okay, hopefully, there we go. Good view of that's just a regular barrel driver. And didn't quite grab a hold of that key pin. And I guess we're doing chamber 5. We'll loosen that grub a little bit more than I'd intended, but that's okay. So that is also a barrel driver. Thankfully symmetrical, since I didn't stop it on its tumble out. So long key pin, that was a min lift, not a zero lift, but minimum. Alright, now back to chamber 3. Spring, and this is another one of those spools, and then this little tapered section on the end. And there's the dog starting to dream. It's about the only time he makes a actual dog noise is in his sleep. Poor degenerate animal. I love him, but he is genetically impaired. Not sure if you can even hear him in the background. Alright. 4. Spring tumbled out. So this and 3 were the high lifts, and they both got these spools. And then that tapered section. And they also, when I was learning this lock, they have, after that tapered section, they have a real short time before their serration. And so early on, what I was doing is I would set the spool portion, and then instead of leaving well enough alone, I would get greedy and try to nudge up past that taper, and almost inevitably push it just a little too far into the overset, and then I'd lose feedback and not be able to get it back. So it wasn't until I shifted to tried and true, if you get something promising off of a pin, stop there and then test your other ones. And when I switched to doing that, I got started getting the open. The 6th driver is interesting. So there's, actually I'm going to set this spring over in the 7th channel because it's a 2-part driver. So there's that inner, and then this second part goes, let's see if I can put them together without setting my lock down. There we go. There you go. So that's it assembled. And then the key pin now pushes up on that center part first, and then this top part just kind of floats. It doesn't have any spring pressure on it. So it just feels kind of strange. A little bit hard to describe, but now that I have those together, I can put the spring back where it goes. And then, as I usually tend to, I'll go ahead and put the passive pins in this 7th channel, along with that interactive pin. So now there's nothing holding the core in place. So I'm going to take it out this way. So there's passive pins up here. There's passive pins down here. And I will put my fingers here because the interactive does have, well, I'll show you. Alright, so there's this. Here's the body. Doesn't have anything terribly exciting in it. It does have, you can see the groove for the passive pins, the groove for the other passive pins. And that's about it. So I'll set that right up here. So there's one row of passive pins. It's just got 1 and 4 are populated. And then here is the second row. So 1, 2, and 4 are populated, and then 6 is this interactive pin. So I'm going to dump these ones from 1 and 4. And then you can see those chambers are empty. Then I'm going to dump, well, I'll be a good boy and put these where they're supposed to be first. Then I'll dump 1, 2, and 4 of this passive row. And put those where they're supposed to go. And then this interactive. I'll try, nope. How can I most safely and nicely dump it I guess I'll try from this side. And there it went. Okay. Now, I'm going to park the core right there and show you what the deal is with this interactive. So, it doesn't want to let go of its cap right now. I must have fouled this up somehow. I think I caught, yep, must have caught a coil of the spring. So there's the base of the pin, and then here is a teeny tiny little spring and a cap. So I'm going to lift the cap and see if I can catch the spring in the crook of my finger there. And there goes the cap. So there's the spring, and pardon me a moment while I try and find the little cap. If I can put this spring down. So here's the little cap. And the way this thing works is, you'll see the chamber is wide, and so this base part of the pin sits down there, and the spring sits in there. This is actually where my very slightly magnetized pair of tweezers is handy. See there, it's caught on the tweezers. So your spring sits in there. And everything is slightly magnetized, and it barely takes anything to lift this sucker. And then your cap sits on top. And what happens is, if you don't compress the cap before you start turning the core, then the cap gets offset from that base part of the pin, and then when the end of the groove comes, the cap can't be compressed down because it's set sideways. So it can compress there, but if it's pushed sideways, then it can't, and it prevents the core from turning. So that's how that little interactive element works. I have actually a little trick for those of you who might leave this in a partially gutted position. This core retainer clip goes really nicely if you can do it in a controlled fashion. So I'm holding that. Come on. Is this a smaller one? Yeah, that's my smaller core retainer clip. Never mind, I don't know where I put my big one. But I held that on with one of the 3D printed, oh here it is, with a 3D printed core retainer clip. So if you want to put this down in a partially reassembled state, you can do it just like that. Holds it right in place there. And then you can put your plug down and not be stuck holding onto it. Anyhow, here is the close-up of the pins. Let me rotate that so that you're looking at it from the more typical orientation. There they are. Nothing to see on the core, really. No milling in the chambers or anything. Alright, that is the Abus XP20s. Have a good evening, everybody.